President Tinubu has continued to appeal to long-suffering Nigerians for patience and understanding in the midst of the current economic squeeze, offering assurances for a better future on the promises of his government's reforms, policies and programs. His foot soldiers have also sold the narrative that the president means well, and one-time political advisor to former president Dr. Nwokobia this past week described him as God-sent to solve Nigeria's problems that he did not create in the first place. Well, we are being joined for a conversation around that and what informs the current push for restructuring by lawyer and convener of Country First Movement, Chris Nwokobia. Good morning and welcome to the show, sir.
Good morning. It's my pleasure to be here.
Good morning.
Well, the president is being described as God-sent by Dr. Nwokobia. We're being told that he means well and that he's pushing through certain initiatives. And this is coming in the face of rising food inflation and inflation across the country, in the face of bad governance, protesters who are minors being arrested and charged to court, not freed until we saw children faint, for the world to see. So I want to ask, do you agree with Dr. Nwokobia? Do you believe the president is God-sent? Do you believe he means well? And do you believe that all the issues we're dealing with right now, even after the removal of the subsidy by President Tinubu and the floating of the naira by President Tinubu, do you believe our problems were not caused by him?
Let me say very importantly that I'm going to address the issues from a non-partisan perspective. Because it's only important, if you truly love your country, to see issues sometimes dispassionately. I do not want to inherit anybody's enemy, any politician's foe. I want to talk to my country and talk to the issues. Now, very importantly, when my board Nwokobia talked about Mr. President being God-sent, I wondered where he was coming from. When he talked about good intentions, I chuckled. You can actually have very wonderful intentions, but not know how to put through your intentions and not know how to get the things done. And what we have clearly, like the second leg of your question, is the fact that we had a president who, on his swearing-in last year, by way of fiat, if you like, by way of at some point, I said maybe he was very excited about the moment, and without interrogating issues about fuel subsidy, decreed or announced the removal of fuel subsidy. And then the first question you ask yourself is, did we really have fuel subsidy? Assuming but not conceding to that fact.
Sorry, what do you mean by did we really have fuel subsidy? Yeah,
because if you look at the issues and the figures, you find out that you live in a country where you don't know the exact millions of liters you consume a day.
Yes.
Up till today, we don't know whether it's 26 million liters. We don't know whether it's 58 million liters. We don't know whether it was 96 at some point. But so the criminality, the gamut of criminality should have been investigated first so that you know who is robbing the nation, who's taking our monies.
But the fuel was being subsidized. We just don't know if it was only being subsidized for ourselves or also our neighboring countries. But the fuel was being subsidized.
No, I still query the issues. You know why? In 2012, when along with the present president, we were at Ojota, we interrogated the issues, we refused Jonathan removing the fuel subsidy. And the arguments were profound. If you are actually subsidizing fuel, we should know who gets what. How many liters of fuel do we consume? How do you subsidize it? These are issues, profound issues. Let me give you an instance. At some point, we're sending crude oil to refineries abroad and then bringing back products. You know that you have several, close to 10 offshoots of crude oil. You have DPK, that's kerosene, jet fuel, you have LPFO, you have HPFO, you have what you call petrol, gas, and several other. Now, if you send it out to a country and then they bring you PMS, what happens to the gamut of distillates that comes from crude oil?
Well, they're also sent back here. We import our
jet fuel. At what
fuel.
cost on the people? Because you see, the first thing we must note as a nation and as a people is that the primary responsibility of government It's not for the novel rich. It's not for the big businesses. It's for the good of the people.
So do you think the fuel subsidy was for the nouveau riche or for the good of the Nigerian people?
Massively, at some point, there was an inquisition into the whole process between the government of the late Yadwa and Jonathan.
Yeah.
And these inquiries led to the fact that, it was a record that some people were actually taking monies and vouchers to the NNPC in the name of subsidy. And some will get 900 vouchers to be paid 999 naira 4 times in a day in the name of subsidy. It was established that there was a massive scam and a massive fraud. Nothing was done about it. Big businesses have gone back to the banks with huge monies and nobody has done anything about it. And in the name of policy reforms, you have decided to increase the poverty of the people. And you're talking about good intentions. No, it should be more than good intentions. Now the IMF will speak with double mouths. The Bretton Woods organizations, the World Bank will speak with double. They'll tell you, oh, this is not exactly what we asked the government to do. But on the other hand, they are applauding it because for them, it's not really about you and I. It's about how they make profit. And so government must interrogate the issues. I am here as a vista of truth, like Prophet Musa by the Red Sea, with the staff saying, let's interrogate the issues. Let's kill the ignorance. Let's argue about some of these things. Because, you see, one of the arguments they made, and what Nwokobia made was that states are sharing more monies now. How do you know that 30,000, which was minimum wage last year, is far greater in value than 80,000 this year? That's the truth. So when you subject the issues to the forensic, you know that people are, and I challenge anybody who wants to debate it, the reforms aren't making any headway. They will not make any headway because what you must do first is to engage the people and build levers of production, grow wealth, rather than remove subsidies. I'll give you another instance. Electricity subsidy, you know what it has done? Without fear, most small-scale businesses thrive on fear. That's what it is. I know so many small-scale businesses have gone under. I own a lounge in Abuja, for instance. Along the axis where my lounge is, there were about 6 lounges and bars around that axis. As I talk to you, about 4 has closed down.
Do you hold the minister responsible, like some people want to hold their governors responsible, or do you only hold the president responsible for the downturn?
The president superintends his government. The president, if you remember when they appointed new ministers, the statement from the presidency is that he is the chief minister. The buck stops at his desk. I think that what we must do, that's why I said I'm talking from a non-partisan perspective. What we must do is to interrogate the issues. Mr. President, you may have very good intentions, but you cannot tax the nation into prosperity. It has never happened. You cannot increase the levers of taxation. It has never happened. The way to grow economy is to cut tax. Ghana is doing it, several places. Donald Trump has said he will do that. Several people have, because if you don't have money at the lower rung of the economy, big businesses do not grow economy. They're big businesses. All their interest is more money. You grow the economy from small-scale businesses. So those who are telling Mr. President that his reforms is paying off are not fair and frank to him. And then one other thing you must look at, because I keep saying to people that except we restructure this dysfunctional structure, we'll have problems as a people. If you have a dysfunctional structure, the first thing to do is fix it. Whilst I was growing up, my late dad told me that everybody's property is nobody's property. And so we live in a country where, across this country, non-state actors are dishing violence and villainy.
I can come in here. I mean, the calls for restructuring have been gaining traction. But from your perspective, what does true restructuring entail? What does it look like? If restructuring were to take place under Tinubu's administration, what specific areas in governance, resource allocation, or even in state autonomy would you prioritize for immediate reform and why?
the first thing to do, fundamentally, because people don't seem to like the word restructuring.
Yeah.
Nigerians, and I don't know why. You know, I want to see the return of the pyramids of granite. I want to see the cocoa fields sprout again. I want to see our palm fields sprout again. Are you aware that every year we import palm oil to the tune of about 80 billion naira? The same Indonesia, Malaysia, and the likes who came here in the year of my birth, 1971, to take seedlings from Nigeria. They bring us palm oil to the tune of about 80 billion. And so there's a structural disconnect. Are you aware that the tallest building at some point in this country, the Cocoa House in Ibadan, was built not from wealth from oil, but wealth from cocoa? Where are the cocoa fields? So if you restructure in terms of devolving power to the component parts, in terms of, and this is what I'm pleading with Mr. President and his minders, you know, wishing that Nigeria was just change on nice words. It's like waiting for Godot. You can't achieve it. You must effectively engage the structures of this country because it's dysfunctional. The Holy Book says...
I want to ask you a question before you continue there. In what way would restructuring help, for example, groundnuts and palm oil production increase in a way that it hasn't right now?
Simple arithmetic. Let me tell you. If you tell the man in the north that he controls his resources, he goes back to the farm. He engages in agriculture. If you tell him that he controls his resources, I'll give you an instance. Almost immediately, the rustlers, the bandits who are engaging in illegal mining, because most of this crisis in the north is a product of illegal mining, finds out that, oh, his government is actually going to control the mines. That means more money for the government at home. They hold the government at home responsible. It will do a whole lot. It will improve wealth, encourage industry, and then security. I'll give you an instance. I'm from the Niger Delta. Every year you talk about stealing our oil wealth. You talk about bandits stealing oil, and no longer can we get up to 2 million barrels of crude oil per day. If you devolve power and resource control, you find out that the boy in Ughelli will know that his local government and the state government are in control of the resources, and he will protect the pipelines.
Yes, I want to ask because I need to just clarify certain things. For example, with groundnuts, which resources are currently not under a person's control? If you own the land and you grow your groundnuts, you own your groundnuts. If you own the land and you grow your palm kernels or whatever, you own the palm kernels. You own the production that comes out of it. Those resources are within your control. And if it's with mining, for example, even if the state, the government or the federal republic rather owns the mines, the government still owns the land, and that's why they have to work with the government, and they pay the governors out of that money. It goes to the state government. It does.
Now, let me tell you something.
So why do we hold... I'm just wondering if you're taking it down to the local level, nothing about the federal government's resource control has anything to do with granules and palm kernels.
It has everything to do because, see, the federal government assumably controls the entire territory of Nigeria. That's point number one. We have a rent-seeking structure where instead of the state, the local government paying money to the state, and then the state pays a certain amount of money to the federal government, every month end, they call it FAC allocation. The state comes to Abuja. It's an anathema. It's a wrong structure. And that's why we have a rent-seeking and a rent-taking structure. In the First Republic, that's why I talked about the cocoa fields. Yeah. In the First Republic, the order was different. The wealth comes from the component regions to the regional government, and then the regional government pays to the center a certain amount. 20%, 30%, then 20% for general upkeep. Then the state holds back about 50%. Now, the states were able to engage in comparative challenge and industry. You don't run a federal government with a command and control unitary strategy. If you do that, you give to everybody. Look at what we do in Nigeria. Every blame goes to the federal government because of the wrong structure. If you have structures that are responsible at the local government level, you find out that rather than perhaps me staying in Abuja here and criticizing the federal government, I'll be on my state governor in Delta State. Yeah. I'll be on my local government chairman. And what does it do? Devolves the levers of responsibility, devolves the levers of control, and then makes governments at the grassroots level responsible to the people. So if you must solve these problems, you must devolve power to the component regions, allow the people to control their resources, and pay if...
But the local government now controls their own financial allocation. I mean, they do it in practice.
Do they? On paper.
In practice.
No, they don't.
So who controls it? The governor?
In your constitution, there's a provision for a joint account. And that's what most governors are still arguing. I think it's section 162.
But the courts have said otherwise.
That the court have said otherwise, what must you do? You know, we tend to want to cut a tree from the flowers and the leaves.
I'm just asking because we're talking about federal
overhaul
versus state governors and holding the governors responsible. That shared account is not with the federal republic. It's
the federal government pays to a joint account at some point. And the state governments are coming out with new laws.
So why do you not hold the state governors responsible for that money not trickling to the local level? Why hold the federal government, who has essentially nothing to do with that account?
Let me give you an aphorism. In trying to cut the tree, we want to cut from flowers and the leaves. What you must do, for as long as the federal government shares money every month to the states and the local government, the state governors are left with an alibi. The local government chairmen are left with an alibi. They'll blame Abuja. But when you devolve, and it's about restructuring, a new constitution, an overhaul of the levers of government. Because I'll give you a practical instance. We've been talking about the need for, and that's where Nwokobia got it wrong. We're talking about the need for devolving power. And then what Tinubu's government has done, watch, is they're creating new federal government agencies that are allegedly controlling the regions. There's NDDC, it was there before, but under this government now you have the Niger Northeast Development Commission, you have Northwest Development Commission. That's not what you need to fix Nigeria. You need to allow the states to control their resources.
Those commissions were agitated for by lawmakers from those regions. People come out and say, my region deserves its own development commission.
What the regions need is to control their resources, not handouts, to control their resources, not handouts from the federal government. That's why I was talking with a friend a few minutes ago, and I said to him,
your argument for restructuring is that resource control is what is
that's what happens in every federalism in the world. Us is an anathema. And let me tell you, the Holy Book says that if the structure is faulty, what can the workers, what can the builders do if the foundation is faulty? No matter how hard you work, no matter how much you struggle to make a system work, if the structure is defective and dysfunctional, that structure will fail. That's exactly why, okay, I'll give you a practical instance. Nwokobia said something that made me chuckle. He said, since this democracy, people have been talking about the need to build a road from Lagos to Calabar, from Sokoto to Badagry. And he said it was one of the laudable things, the government. Where in the world do you have, did you hear Bush talking about building roads?
Yes, actually. The interstate is one of...
Kamala talk about building roads.
Yes, infrastructure...
What roads?
First of all, infrastructural development is one of the things that people laud in order to get back into office. Whether
the states build these infrastructures.
No, the interstate highways in America are built by the federal government.
Supported?
It's not built by the state. It is built by the federation.
Where, on what budget?
The federal government's budget.
Let me tell you what government does in America. Government has what it calls levers of responsibility, policy making, policy programmatic. Private businesses, state governments, and the federal government collaborate in ensuring that these things work. In Nigeria, you don't have interconnecting roads within the states to make people pull products from the farm to the city. You don't have connecting roads.
Are you saying we do not have any connecting roads in Nigeria?
I can't say, nobody would say
Lekki
that.
Ekpe Expressway
Majorly,
as
what
well.
I'm saying, when I use the word,
Yes.
what I'm saying is that the roads are largely dysfunctional.
Yes,
Comatose and decrepit.
we have poor infrastructure,
Now,
yes.
if you have this kind of facilities everywhere, what do you need to make them work? You need to empower the states to take, Edo State, for instance, the alibi the government had was that the roads were federal roads. They couldn't fix them. Now, what do you need to make governance responsible and responsive to the people? You have to, and this is my appeal to Mr. President. My critical position is not partisan. He was with us in the trenches and in the streets when we talked about the need to devolve power. He wrote pieces and supported Pronaco. It was a philosophy of his government in Lagos State, where on all scores presented to the federal government, they need to devolve power. And what we're saying is that if you devolve power, it makes governments responsible to the people. It creates a sense of ownership that makes leadership functional.
1 second. So we're just going to go on a quick break now. And when we come back, we'll return to this very interesting conversation. Stay with us. Well, welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. We're having a very interesting conversation with Mr. Chris Nwokobia about restructuring in Nigeria and, of course, resource allocation. So you were in the middle of thoughts there, but if we're talking about restructuring and, people are agitating for regional government, some people think we need 10 regions. Some people are even still agitating for a new state of Anioma, a state in Nigeria. Now, all these with new administration, or new administrative offices come new costs. And cost of governance in Nigeria is extremely high. I don't think people want to see a new regional head with his own new convoy and his own, new office. So how do we agitate for these things when we know that it might increase our bottom line and not necessarily increase efficient governance?
This is a fantastic question. Let me say that very strategically, that question has brought to the fore most of the issues we're talking about. Now, the United States of America, with a landmass of about 300 and something million people, has just about 12, 13 ministers. Because what they are about is policy articulation and all that. Just a few minutes ago, we were talking about those federal gasoline tax and all that. Most of those monies for those roads, they pay to the state transportation department, and the state undertakes the project on behalf of the federal government. That's how federalism is run.
Where is this?
In America. I just did a Google check on it. Now this funding mostly comes from federal gasoline tax and mostly goes to state departments of transportation. Yes.
However,
I'm trying.
The states also still pay allocation back to the federal government, even in America.
Now what you do, if you understand how federalism works. For instance, even in China, China is assumedly a communist where you have command and control. You have some federal governments that are in control of growing wealth and growing their infrastructure. If you truly want to grow infrastructure, look at the First Republic Constitution and the Independence Constitution. Most of the things you see in Ibadan, beautiful GRAs, beautiful streets, were built then because the Western government had control of its resources. Now, if you don't restructure, the call for more ministries will continue. I'm coming straight to your question. If you don't restructure, you will have, now we have about 46 or 47 ministers. Now, the National Assembly is creating more development commissions. You're empowering the federal government more and more. And what it does is engender corruption. I'll give you an instance. There's a federal government college in my hometown of Ibuzo in Delta State. The federal government is about supply of books there, newspapers, laptops. Who does that? An unwieldy government will fail. If you had 10 cents to run a government, and that's why I appeal to people like Bodo Yokupe, who have the ears of Mr. President, to tell him, if you have an unwieldy structure, government cannot be a Superman. You must have the states control education at that level, control Medicare at that level. Government should come with policy articulation. This is what we want to do. This is the policy trust of government. States will buy into it.
I have a question.
Now,
The federal government in your home, can you tell me the name again? Iwuzo,
in Delta State.
In Delta State, yes. But
they have a school there.
Yes, but
they fund.
That they fund. Fantastic. But in
Lagos,
it
is not fantastic.
No,
I'm
just saying I got that right. But in Lagos State,
Ijaniki,
in Lagos State,
the roofs are leaking.
In Lagos State, you have federal government hospital, right? You have federal government and you also have state government hospital. You have federal government teaching hospital. You have state government teaching hospital.
We don't have need of that. That is why there is no efficiency.
I'm asking.
If you restructure, give health to the state to run.
But
give most of these things. You see, we have what you call a residual list, concurrent list, and federal list, where the federal government exclusive list runs. It's about 62 items. You don't need a federal government that has more than 15 items to chew.
I have one last question for you, very, very quickly. Just 5 seconds. The federal government removed power. Okay, 10 seconds. Federal government removed power from the exclusive list. Has your state done anything to improve power within your state? Now that they're empowered to do so.
There are several states that are coming with yes.
Has your state improved
but
power?
Let me answer. In restructuring, the federal government should have no reason to remove power. The state should be absolutely in charge of power. I'll give you another instance. There's coal in Enugu State. That coal can generate power for the whole Southeast. But because you have big businesses who in cahoots with the federal government want to run energy, that's why your national grid is consistently collapsing.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Devolve this control, let the states control absolutely what concerns them in that area, and you find out that these things will stop.
Okay, well, thank you very much for joining us for this very interesting conversation today.
The pleasure is mine.